Hello, everybody. It's Neveramon, and today I wanted to talk about a topic I've had on my mind for a very, very long time, and that is the emergence of parry-based combat systems on the Roblox platform. Now, for those who don't fully know, a parry-based combat system is specifically a combat system where you get access to a mechanic called parrying. When parrying is done with proper timing, it will allow you to completely negate any damage or stun you would have received from an attack, and sometimes even allow for your own counterattack, although often this counterattack itself can be parried, leading to something known as a parry trade. Now, most people say that parry-based combat systems are more skill-based or more rewarding than a normal combat system, but I'd beg to say that this is only the case when the system is implemented properly in a very, very specific way. Now, you may not fully understand what I mean by this, but I'll be explaining it shortly. You see, in fighting games and in games in general, there are three main types of combat system, being true stun, micro stun, and no stun. With true stun combat systems, after you're hit, you're unable to do an action for a while, basically causing the person who attacked you to get another confirmed attack. Now, they can keep doing this over and over to basically put you in what is called a combo. However, often these combos have fall off due to either attack cooldowns or some other mechanic. Another commonly seen combat system is micro stun. With micro stun, after you're hit with an attack, you're also unable to react for a short amount of time. However, this period of time is usually short enough that by the time the next attack is almost fully hit you, you'll be able to react if you're quick enough. Most games that claim they're no stun are actually just micro stun, but most people don't actually look into stuff like this. And the final commonly seen combat system is no stun, where after getting hit, you're almost immediately able to react in almost any way. Probably the most popular example of no stun right now is Deepwoken, which most of you probably know of. In that game, once you're hit with an attack, you'll almost always be able to parry or dodge immediately after, unless you get put in the Dawn Walker or Arc Warrior combo of Doom that reduces your HP to 0 after like 5 hits. Which is actually something I wanted to briefly touch on, and that's that I feel like with every update, Deepwoken slowly diverges more from no stun to micro stun, as some of the combos you can do in the game are almost entirely confirmed, or unless you vent or do something else to allow yourself to escape it. But quickly returning to the original topic, I have to say that parrying only really works as a mechanic in no stun, and very rarely in micro stun. You see, in no stun, when you get hit, you can immediately respond with a parry, and it's just a free action, basically. But with micro stun, a lot of the time in these systems, when you get hit with an attack, you just won't be able to react after that. And so the system becomes almost entirely redundant because you'll never be able to parry anyway. And some games have even tried to add parrying into true stun, but simply by the definition of true stun, that is not possible. With true stun, if they have parrying, it's almost always just a way to avoid getting put in a combo in the first place, instead of a way to get yourself out of a combo, like it's really supposed to be. Also, in a lot of recent games, you'll see that they don't actually properly telegraph their attacks. Parrying only really works when the attacks are either well telegraphed or slow enough to actually read. But in these games that should realistically just commit to being true stun, you'll see that the attacks are either so untelegraphed or so quick that parrying just becomes a matter of spamming F. And this is not how parrying should work. I would much rather play a game that's micro stun and true stun and fully commits to it, instead trying to find the merits of its own system, instead of superficially trying to pretend it's no stun by adding parrying. However, in recent Roblox, parrying has become sort of a trend, the IT combat system that everyone is trying to implement into their games. And so a lot of these developers are doing the equivalent of putting three kids in a trench coat and saying they're an adult, and slapping parrying onto their combat system to try and make it seem more skill-based, when in reality it's no better than any other true stun combat system. Although I really don't like giving Deepwoken praise, Deepwoken is one of the only games in recent years to actually implement parrying right. Other games off the top of my head that do it right would be games like Ninja. I know Ninja did it fairly well. Although games that don't do it right probably outnumber games that have actually managed to accomplish this. Yes, I'm looking at you, Type Soul. And let me just quickly say, I personally think Type Soul has one of the worst parrying mechanics in recent history. It was absolutely atrocious. Really, instead of having to see the attack, read the attack, and parry it, it was more that you had to predict the opponent was going to do an attack in general and then press F preemptively. That's so unreasonably stupid to me. Unless you had future sight, there was no way you were going to parry any damn attacks. It was such a dumb system that I think if you removed it entirely, the combat would have changed very little. It would have probably ended up being about 99.999% the same. And honestly, I'm sort of getting tired of parry-based combat systems, just in general. We've seen so many games implement this mechanic that it's honestly becoming stale, and I'm actually looking for a good combat system that doesn't have this mechanic in it. And yes, they do exist. It's just that people seem to believe that if it's not parry-based, it's not skill-based. Not every game has a combat system like Peroxide just because it doesn't have parrying. Now, one of my favorite examples of a game that doesn't have parrying but still has a good combat system is Rogue Lineage. Now, many of you may raise an eyebrow to that because Rogue Lineage Ultra Combat is some of the most cancer combat you'll ever see. It's basically like True Stun turned up to 11 because you can confirm combos from 30 meters away by using some random spell. But I'm not talking about Ultra Combat here. I'm talking about Freshie, Base, and Superclass combat, which is actually a lot closer to Micro Stun than True Stun. Most attacks in some way, shape, or form can be avoided, and even when you get put into a combo, there's multiple different ways you can escape. That's as long as you know how the mechanics of the game actually work. But regardless, it can still be very skill-based, Rogue Lineage combat, as long as you don't get put into an infinite M2 combo of doom that's completely unpunishable, because for whatever reason, the developers made the M2 cooldown just short enough where you can chain it into each other as long as you switch from your weapon to your fist, and your weapon and your fist, and back and forth and back and forth. They should really fix that. That shouldn't be a thing. Oh, and also, before I forget, I said this suggestion a long time ago, and I know a lot of people disagree on me with this, but please add some sort of universal spell cooldown if you're not a mage, or hell, even mages should get a universal spell cooldown, or something, just to prevent them from spamming spells over and over and over again. It's arguably one of the worst aspects of Rogue Lineage's combat. But it's really hard to describe. It's like Rogue Lineage combat has this unique feel that only it has. And it makes it really fun to play despite the combat not really being that unique. Me personally, I think that the Tundra update was the worst update to ever come to Rogue Lineage because it added the cancer that is Ultra classes. If Ultra classes had never been added, or at least had been added in some different way to Rogue Lineage, I feel like the combat would be a lot more fun, and the game might even be in a better state than it currently is today. Now, that's really all I had to say for today. Once again, if you're a parry-based game, please at least implement it properly. And if you're not, don't feel the pressure to add parrying. There's a bunch of different ways you can make your combat fun and skill-based, so don't just follow the trend of parry-based combat systems. Thank you all for listening to this. Make sure to follow my Twitch. Make sure to like and subscribe because I know like half of y'all don't do that. And I'd really appreciate any support you all give me. This was Never Am On, and I'm signing out. Goodbye.